In this lesson, we'll talk about the 2.5D canvas and the concept of pixels. So everybody knows what a pixel is. It's a picture element. It's a little dot of color that creates pictures that we create in something like Photoshop or when we paint digitally or display something digitally. But in Zbrush, there's something called pixels, so P-I-X-O-L-S, and they're a little bit different. So whereas pixels contain color information, pixels contain not only color information, but also depth information and material information. So let's take a look at what that means. Now, the first thing I'm going to do in our canvas, you can see this gradient here, just so we can see things a little bit easier. I'm going to turn that gradient off by going to Document. Let's take the range down to 0. Now I'm going to come over to the tool palette, and instead of choosing a 3D object as our tool, I'm going to choose this simple brush. And without changing anything else, I'm just going to stroke across the canvas. So you can see we get this sort of series of raised squares. It doesn't really look very good, and that's because we need to add an alpha. But you can see that it does have kind of a color, and the red is the red that's coming from this red wax material. So you can see they're also sort of raised up a little bit, and the fact that we have Z-add selected means that we're going to be raising up the detail. So to get something that looks a little bit better, I'm going to clear the canvas, Control-N, and I'm going to add just a simple alpha. Let's just add a sort of spherical alpha, and let's do the same stroke. So now you can see we get a nice smooth stroke that's raised in the center. So it does have that sort of 3D look, but again, this isn't a 3D object. This is a stroke that has depth information. So we've raised it up, and we've also applied a material to it, you can see here, and a color, which in this case is white, so we're basically just seeing the color of the material. We could also come in here, choose Z sub, and sculpt away that depth. So this canvas actually keeps track of the depth information. Okay, so if I'm using a tablet and I sculpt really lightly, you can see I'm pushing that in. I'm not just cutting it out. I'm pushing it in until it gets to the point where it actually makes a hole. I could come back in with Add and raise those areas up. Again, we're not rotating around this. This isn't a 3D object. We can go in and move those strokes around though. So this is the last stroke that I did where I just, that dot, I can actually move that around. Let's clear the canvas again. Go back to Draw, clear the canvas. We can take whatever stroke we did last and we can move it around. We can rotate it. We go back to Draw, we can create additional strokes. So I can come in here still with Z-add and MRGB, which means material and color, and sculpt or draw across there. Now, if I want to change up the, let's say the material, let's choose this sort of chrome and let's get kind of a green color. Now, I haven't changed anything else. I'm still using material and RGB plus Z-add. Now, my next stroke, you can see, will have that same material. Okay. Now, I can also turn off Z-add, and now I'm just painting with material and color. So we can have any sort of combination of these, Z-add, Z-subtract, and then material, color, or material and color, and then we can adjust intensities as well to get the look that we want. So this is good for kind of illustration and creating illustrations that have depth, because you can see as I drag across here and I go to move this, these strokes all sort of interact with each other. So you can see it changing as we're going through the different depths that we have here. So we do have some interaction between those strokes, but we can also use this on our objects in 3D space. So let's clear the canvas, and I'm going to come back out and just choose a sphere. We'll drag it out here, and I'm going to hit the T key. I'm going to make this a poly mesh. And let's go ahead and subdivide this. So Control D to subdivide a few times. So the sphere, right now it's taking on the material and color that we have selected. If we change the color, it's going to take on that color. That's because we don't actually have a material or color assigned to the points on this mesh. In order to do that, we can go to Color and just fill our object. Now, when we fill it, it's going to be based on what we have selected here. So we want to do a combination of the material and the color, so we'll do MRGB at 100%. Let's fill the object. So now when we change our material or our color, the object is not affected. Only future strokes are affected. So let's say I'm sculpting on our object now. We've got Z add selected. We've got mRGB selected. We've got green, and we've got another material selected, a different material. Okay, this basic material. So now if we sculpt, you can see not only is that raised up off of the mesh, but all of those points are assigned a new material and a new color. So think of that not only as affecting the pixels, not only affecting the flat sort of 2.5D canvas, but also our 3D objects as well as we move around them. That gives us the ability to paint different materials and colors. If I wanted to keep the material but change the color, I could say, okay, I only want to do the color, and I don't even want to raise up. I just want to paint a new color on this same material. So I can just paint color, or I can just sculpt on this without changing the material or the color. Okay, or I can just change the material but not the color. Keep that red but change it to that basic material instead of the reflective material. So you have all these options when you're sculpting, and so it's really makes things easy when you're trying to make matching detail, things that need to be sculpted and painted at the same time. You can do it very easily here in ZBrush. Okay? Now keep in mind, if you ever end or get out of edit mode, you're going to drop that object to the canvas. So it's still there. It's as if we had drawn it out and not hit T at all, not went into edit mode, gone into edit mode. So now if I try to actually rotate around, I'm just going to draw another one of these out, if you remember that from the beginning. Okay, if we go into edit mode now, it's going to take that last one into edit mode, but it's going to leave everything else on the canvas. Okay, so even though we're in edit mode, we still see all of these. If we hit Control N to clear the canvas, it's going to get rid of all those except the one that we have in edit mode. So if you find yourself working with a piece of geometry, then all of a sudden you can't move around it, you're just drawing out new ones, it just means you've dropped out of edit mode. And all you have to do is redraw your tool out. It's going to be saved in here in the tool palette. Just draw that out again, go back to edit mode, and then clear your canvas. Okay, or you can just clear the canvas and draw a fresh one out. Make sure to go back to edit mode though when you do that. Okay, so that's the key thing I want you to get from that, is the fact that when we paint on our models or just on the canvas, we're not only painting with depth, but also with color information and material information based on the material and color that we have selected here and the settings that we have up at the top. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more in depth next about creating geometry. So we'll talk about working with primitives, converting to polygons that we kind of touched on, and then using Lightbox to create some existing assets. So we'll go ahead and do that next.